Close your eyes for a moment and remember a time that you felt really good. Maybe you'd fallen in love, or you were relaxing with friends, or maybe you just achieved something. But return to that time like you're back there again. Now, see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel how good you felt. 50% of the reason why people end up at the doctors now can be traced back to too much stress, anxiety, fear. So this modern age that we live in means we have to adapt. I continually ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? And I'm amazed at people who come back with a 4 or 5. I mean, the average in this country is a 6. In fact, if you look at from the 1940s, we're not any happier today than we were then, but yet we live longer, we've got greater freedoms, we're richer. You'd think we'd be happier, but we're not any happier since the 40s.
The way you're feeling right now is solely because you are playing out something in your past or in your future, a movie in your mind that may or may not be true. That's basically 99% of chance of how you're feeling right now.
What I'm helping people to do is not just get chilled out, because anxious people go, I don't want that, I want my edge, because if I lose my edge, I'll be a victim, right? What they want to be able to do is to control it, to have greater control over their thoughts and feelings. And so I encourage people to break through their limitations, to achieve more of their potential, really. So this isn't just about getting calm from anxiety. No, it's about actually being able to deal with all this stuff without getting freaked out, be more resourceful, more resilient, but also have a richer life.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Paul McKenna, the hypnotherapist, behavioral scientist, and best-selling author. Over the last 30 years, you've helped tens of millions of people improve their lives through hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming. You were credited by The Times as being one of the world's most important modern-day self-help gurus and are UK's most successful and prolific non-fiction author, with your books being translated into 32 languages and selling 10 million copies worldwide. Your best-selling book, I Can Make You Thin, is the most successful self-help book in UK history, and your past clients include some of the most famous people on the planet. Your latest book, Freedom from Anxiety, promises to help anyone suffering from stress, fear, and worry to live a more joyful life. You believe that by reprogramming the subconscious mind, anyone can instantly switch off anxiety and reach a state of calmness. Paul, welcome back to London Real.
It's lovely to be here, Brian. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to have you. I can't wait to jump into this. This book is perfectly timed. The world needs freedom from their anxieties. And look, I've been following your work, as I've said before in the show, for 15 years plus. I used to listen to your mind programming CD when I was taking a taxi going into the city of London to deal with all those greedy bankers. And I needed your mind programming CD, and I still remember the techniques, and we're going to get into them later with the motion picture and making it small. And I just want to say before we get started, you're an OG, which is known as original gangster down in America, and it just means you've been doing this for a long time, creating new forms of media, and I can't wait to jump into this, Paul. Let's talk about the last couple of years, because you know, in 2020, we got locked down, we were dealing with a disease we didn't understand, In the last year, we've got the economy going down, double-digit inflation, and now we've had a war going on right in our backyard for the last year. You've called it a psychological pandemic.
Yeah.
Anxiety's dialed up all around the world. Tell me about how you view that state, and is that one of the reasons you decided to write this book?
Well, the way I view it is, you're absolutely right. We've been in a biological pandemic, we're in a psychological one now. And I wish I could magic away the problems, the virus, the war, the economy, and make it all right, but I can't. But what I can do is I can help people to become more resilient, to be able to turn off the unnecessary anxiety, fear, stress, worry, and to become more resourceful, to become more confident, more optimistic. And the reason I can do this is because in the last 20, 30 years, we've made amazing advancements in the world of psychology. I mean, years ago, for example, back in the 1980s, if you had a cellular phone, a mobile phone, it was the size of a brick and all you could do was make calls on it. Nowadays, a mobile phone is the size of a bar of chocolate and it's a supercomputer. You can run your entire life on this. So in the same way, psych tech has made this big jump. So it used to take like 6 months to fix a phobia. Now, not even 60 minutes. And in the same way, anxiety, which is prevalent everywhere, because, for example, you turn on the TV, you open a newspaper, you're under attack. It's the virus, it's the economy, it's the war, etc. And understandably, people do need to be concerned because, if you hadn't had some anxiety in the last couple of years, there'd be something wrong because of everything that's going on in the world. However, when all of your bandwidth is taken up with survival thoughts and you're worrying about everything, there's no room for optimism, joy, creativity, enjoying the richness of life, etc. So this book is a series of techniques. It's a little bit about my journey too, but it's very user-friendly. And what it does is it helps somebody train their brain so that they can switch off the overwhelm and feel more in control, be in a state of relaxed alertness. It also comes with downloadable audio techniques. So say you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, you hit a button, I pop out and I help you to get calm and feel more in control. So really the thing to say about anxiety and anxious people that I haven't mentioned is that mostly anxious people are usually very motivated. They tend to be perfectionists. They're doers, they're achievers. But when you're achieving everything at the cost of you being anxious all the time, the problem is that's taking a toll on your health, right? It means that it's a very uncomfortable place to live. Sure, you get stuff done, but at what cost? And it weakens your immune system. It means you make bad decisions. So in some respects, it's a false economy. Wouldn't it be great to be able to achieve all the things that you want to achieve, but without feeling overwhelmed, without white knuckling it to life? And to put it simply, anxiety, stress, fear is a habit. And people have had a good opportunity to practice that over the last few years, getting really wound up, worried about everything so that you can go from 0 to 100, in a few seconds. And in the same way, confidence is a habit. You naturally think about things optimistically or how you're going to solve the problems and you see outcomes, that sort of stuff. So what I'm helping people to do is not just get chilled out, because anxious people go, I don't want that. I want my edge, because if I lose my edge, I'll be a victim, right? What they want to be able to do is to control it, to have greater control over their thoughts and feelings. And so what this book and the audio does, the system, if you like, is it shifts people's perceptual filters, the way that they're taking in sensory input, processing it, right? Because we need to know if there are real threats to us, or if we're perhaps overthinking things, preparing for emergencies that are never going to happen. That famous Mark Twain saying, I've been through some terrible experiences in my life and some of them actually happened, is that, right? And becoming just resourceful, resilient. So you're actually more efficient than you were before.
You mentioned a little bit that we can sometimes make it a habit of being anxious. Do some people get addicted to anxiety or get addicted to worrying about things not in their control? Is that why some people have 10 news apps on their phone and they're checking everyone's Instagram to see if they've offended them recently? Or...
Yeah, so that they're in almost the category of OCD. These people are they think that if they check everything, the world's going to keep turning, right? And they could then feel safe. So it's almost like a meditation, if you like. It's just not a relaxing one. And so this kind of control freak thing and by the way, people say to me, you're a control freak. I go, yeah, thank you very much. I like feeling in control of things. But when it gets to the point that your quality of life is is to some extent detracted from, and you become obsessed with looking at these things, and you can't allow yourself any downtime or joy because that's your obsession, then I think it's that point that you need to address it, because basically it all comes back to, does your life work? Does your life work? So, we've all met super achievers, miserable millionaires, billionaires, sure, they might have a lot of money or they might have a lot of inverted commas success, but their quality of life isn't great. And it's the same with people that are overly anxious. Sure, they get stuff done, maybe they're achievers, yeah? But at what cost? What I'm saying is, if I continually ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? And I'm amazed at people who come back with a 4 or 5. I mean, the average in this country is a 6. In fact, if you look at from the 1940s, we're not any happier today than we were then, but yet we live longer, we've got greater freedoms, we're richer, we've got all these sort of comforts of modern life. And you'd think we'd be happier, but we're not any happier since the 40s.
Yeah, I know that's always a good thing to remember. Look, we're going to be getting into some amazing techniques, so I want people to know that that's definitely coming. That device you just pulled out of your jacket, that wasn't around in the 1940s. Now we have this digital access all the time. It's beeping, it's buzzing. We're physically addicted to that. And we get wound up by these people we never met. We get to say bad things to people we never met. How much of that is because of that digital device?
Well, there's no doubt that it's changed the way that we function in the world. People do get addicted to the amount of likes that they get on one of these things, and they get a serotonin, dopamine hit, just as you would from a drug. So in a sense, it's become like a drug. When somebody puts their phone next to you on the table and they're talking to you, they're not as present with you because they're checking on this. However, think of all the good things it enables you to do. You can have your music, your office, you can connect with people, you can watch television. It's giving you a lot of good things. But as you rightly say, with regard to social media, people spend a lot of time arguing with people that they don't know about stuff that, really isn't that important. And so, I mean, I do think, unless you really enjoy that, and why would you? Then, for example, that's perhaps a negative use. Plus, also the spread of information that is deliberately designed to wind you up. People are more likely to forward fake news than real news because it's more emotive and shocking, and it plays into reinforcing bias and things like that. So there are a whole load of things that I think are fairly common knowledge now about the whole load of negatives about social media, about having, you're always at the office with this, I mean, I remember years ago going away on vacation. This was back in the 90s, before even social media. And I took all my books and papers and things with me. And I was working away and I thought, I'm still in the office. I'm just in a nicer location, but I'm still in the office. And in a sense, that's what this has done. It gives you a sense of immediacy and, you could argue some more democracy in as much as you have a voice now, or you can get a groundswell of things through social media. But then also, is the world that different really? It's still run by a sort of a handful of elites, or elite power bases, etc.
You have an incredible perspective because you've been doing this for 30 years. I'm not trying to date you or anything, but you've seen everything go from almost pre-internet to Web 1, where it was kind of like we would look up an informational website, to Web 2, where we could upload content, to now. And I know in the book you talk about, how medication's gone up in this country, but do you see a different type of person when you practice, a different type of anxiety over that 30 years?
Oh, absolutely. No, the anxiety is these days can be about anything, by the way. I mean, people who are, properly anxious people, the content really isn't so important. It's the structure. It's the way that they wind themselves up because they're constantly searching for threat. That's the job of the amygdala, the threat center in the brain, right? So you could say, someone's going away on holiday. Oh, what about the taxi? Will it pick us up? What about the plane? What about this? You could take all of that away so it's all been sorted. Then they'll start worrying about climate change, or then they'll start worrying about, anything, the color of the ceiling. So basically, anxious people, there's plenty out there. There's a smorgasbord of things to wind yourself up about if you want to. What I'm saying is that being in a constant state of arousal is not good for your immune system, for your state of mind, and ultimately for your health. 50% of the reason why people end up at the doctors now can be traced back to too much stress, anxiety, fear. So this modern age that we live in means we have to adapt. I have something called ADHD, attention hyperdeficit disorder. And that means that, I'm often thinking about lots of things simultaneously, and, my mind appears to wander to lots of things. And that's because a friend of mine is an expert in this, and he says it's not a disorder, it's an adaptation of the species. When you and I were growing up, there were 3 TV channels, and then, wow, there was 4. That was a big deal, wasn't it? Now there's 4 billion, right? Because we've got the internet. So these MTV kids who see everything and watch nothing, according to one of the Harvard studies, I think it is, they flick to things and you think, I'm watching any of it. No, they're surfing through until they find something that interests them, and then they concentrate. So for me, my ADHD is useful when I'm dealing with someone else who's a fast thinker, who can think about multiple things simultaneously, so I can keep track of all of it, right? And more. And then find a solution for them. I can build a hologram around you when you describe to me your problems, and I can see, this is how you create your internal world. Now, the only thing is that can be, that's something to use when I'm at the office. But, when I take it home, it's very frustrating for my wife, because I'm, holding several ideas simultaneously and functioning, but it's just exhausting for those people around you. So, my way of controlling it is meditation, is the kind of techniques actually that are in this book.
Right. And it also can, you call it a disorder, I guess it's called disorder, but you walked in here and you and I are having conversations on 2 or 3, 4 threads at the same time. Yeah. And I'm loving it, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the mayor, we're talking about Twitter, we're talking about this, we're talking about that. It's like all functioning together.
Yeah.
But also you want to be able to dial it down if you need to. And a lot of people choose to dial their anxiety down with medication. That could mean smoking, that could mean drinking, that could mean actual antidepressants. And is that just a natural thing for humans, just to grab something that takes them out of that anxiety?
Absolutely. So all human beings are changing the way they feel by some external means: drinking, drug taking, gambling, sex, shopping, television, and food, particularly sugar food, the world's drug of choice, right?
We love to change our state, don't we? Intentionally.
Yeah, that's it. We change our state if it's too overwhelming, particularly what we call inescapable stress. So, particularly when it comes to, say, addiction, inescapable stress is just too much in an environment. I can't seem to control it. I need an out. So I'm going to go and, stuff myself with chocolate, or I'm going to go gambling, or I'm going to get drunk or something. Or just, internally within your world, I just can't stop thinking about this problem and the way I've been treated, and I'm replaying the movie over and over again. I got to get out of this. So when you look at, say, people who grow up in an environment, in a ghetto where there's inescapable stress because there's potential threats of violence, etc., continually, you can understand why they will turn to addiction. And then you look at, how do these, toffs, these rich kids, how do they end up as addicts? And, they get shipped off at a very young age, by their parents who didn't necessarily show them all the love they should have, and they're sent to boarding school, and they've got this sense of abandonment that lives with them forever. So their inescapable stress is solved by that. And you see, I'm generalizing massively, but the broad brushstrokes of what I just said are true. And this is, a new thinking in terms of why people are using escapism. And by the way, social media is another one. I put that in there too.
Yeah, everything on our phone is, like you said, something to take us out of the present, maybe out of the future. Before we jump into some of these techniques, I've always heard that expression that depression is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future. You should be present. How do you feel about that expression?
Well, I don't know if I entirely agree with it. To me, depression is it's an umbrella term for a whole load of different things. Now, depression is partly neurochemical. It's also a coding issue. By coding, I mean the way that we represent reality to ourselves, what we see in our mind in the movies and what we say to ourselves, essentially, is the basis of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. So, for example, you can say to a depressed person, remember a time you felt good? And they'll go, I've never felt good. And you say, no, come on, surely must have been a time. They went, I just thought I did at the time. So they've taken something that they did feel good about and they've recoded it. So their brain can take really happy stuff and turn it miserable, code it grey, etc. So depression is, it's real, it's neurochemical, but it's also psychological. And I've worked with quite a lot of people over the years who are depressed. I once got depressed myself about 10 years ago for a while when my father died and I was working in the area of PTSD, depression, and got infected with it myself. And I've seen it. I've looked it in the eye, and it's a very dangerous place to be because you don't care about anything. You don't care whether you live or die, and so there's no point in anything. And I found my way back. I let my little timeshare at the edge of the abyss go, and I found my way back. And because of that, I'm now able to help people who are depressed, because when they talk about what's going on, I'm able to map that. I'm able to have a sense of rapport with people who are in that dreadful place, and gently help them back from that, because that's not something that's just flip like that. It's usually a process over time. So I wouldn't say, I can see why somebody would make that statement, but depression it's usually a whole load of unprocessed emotions. It's usually a whole load of simultaneous disappointments, changes in environment, changes in perceptual filters, changes in the way someone's structuring their whole world, the way they're picturing it, what they're telling themselves. Their reality tunnel is one that doesn't have optimism and joy. It's usually no planning in it. It's usually seeing that they're just going to have more and more of the same. So what's the point? And if you go to, say, the endpoint with something like that, that's why people who commit suicide usually have low serotonin, dopamine, but also they feel so low, they see it as a solution to the end of the pain. It's a sort of window of insanity.
And so also saying anxiety is living in the future is just simplifying it way too much. It's much more complicated.
It's like a bumper stick. It's not bad, right? Anxiety is, it's usually characterized as a feeling of foreboding, and I like the living in the future. It's the sort of thing. Did Eckhart Tolle say that? It's the sort of thing he might say.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, okay. but this living in the future is. Let me put it like this, right? This is the cast iron way of describing it. I think the only way to feel good or bad about anything is to either remember something good or bad that happened, or imagine something good or bad that did happen. Actually, if you take out the fact that something like is happening in the present, like being bitten by a dog, you could feel bad about that, right? Okay, but really the only two ways the majority of people in the world feel good or bad, remember or imagine, so past or future. So as my friend Richard Bandler says, disappointment requires adequate planning. And in order to be anxious, you've got to be thinking forward, you've got to be thinking about things that could go wrong. And the point of that is good. It's so you can head them off at the pass. It's so that you can go, this and this and that could happen. Oh, right, we'll take that and that and that step, and you've inoculated it, right? Or you've mitigated it. The problem is if that's all you do, if all you think about what could go wrong, you end up potentially making that a self-fulfilling prophecy. So as well as thinking about what could go wrong, you've got to think about what could go right. And that's the bit of the equation that a lot of people who are anxious miss out on. I
think I'm in danger of my past, of thinking all the things that could go wrong in the future. Also, I was trained as a mechanical engineer at MIT, and so if I did my job right, the bridges didn't break and the planes didn't come out of the sky and the cars didn't explode.
Sure.
But you can take it too far. And then, like you said, if you continue to think about that, in some ways you can manifest it, or you can make it more likely to happen if you're constantly going through those scenarios.
Yeah, and if you haven't imagined things going right, you're not telling your unconscious mind, your brain. A simple example of how, because a lot of people I know, I meet, they are thinking about what they don't want, right? They're thinking about what they don't want to have happen. I don't want to be anxious when I get up to speak, and I don't want to forget my lines. I don't want the audience to look at me and think blah, 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 blah. And they've rehearsed it all, adequate planning. Rather than thinking, yep, sure, those things could happen. What will I do to prepare? Boom, 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 boom. And then thinking about everything going beautifully, thinking about everything going really smoothly. The example I would use is when I worked with Nick Faldo, the world champion, golfer, amazing golfer. And his problem was he was hitting the ball, it was going in the bunker. And so I flew out to Florida and we went on the golf course, and I said, so the pin, the holes out there, I said, so show me how you do this. And he goes, right, mustn't hit it in the bunker, bam, boom, right in, not just in the bunker, right in the center of the bunker, perfectly. So I said, what happened there? He said, well, I thought to myself, I mustn't hit it in the bunker. Now, in order to knot something, you have to think of it first and then put an X through it or move the picture aside or whatever. So the unconscious doesn't process the negation. Try not to think of an elephant. You have to elephant and then knot it, yeah? So I said, would you try not to hit it in the hole? He went, what? I said, kind of just try that. Think to myself, I mustn't hit it in the hole. Okay, I mustn't hit it in the hole, right next to the hole. So this whole thing about thinking about what we don't want is useful, provided we add in what we do want.
Right, that's crucial. 3 sections of the book. First one is instant freedom from anxiety, which I hopefully we're going to jump into with some exercises. Then you talk about deeper calm, building your resilience. And then finally, you talk about creating a richer world with some incredible things like vision boards and stuff. I'd love to get into all of it. People are on their edge of their seats. They're like, I'm anxious, Paul. How can you instantly help me? How do you do it?
All right, we'll do 2 techniques right now. And these are simple things that have a big impact. Because people watching, online or on TV, where it is, will want to be able to do something right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 techniques together that are in this book. And the first one is used by all 4 divisions of the American military. And this comes from the Institute of Heart Math. So get anxious. Think about something that makes you anxious.
Okay, got it.
Okay, put your hand on your heart.
Okay.
So by doing that, you draw your attention to your heart, the second brain. You begin to reduce cortisol. And then what we do is we do 3 deep breaths, right? So in through the nose, short, and then slowly out. Because this activates the parasympathetic nervous system. In, again. Just hold it for a moment. And then out. And then in again. And then as you let that breath go, if it's safe and appropriate to do so, close your eyes for a moment and remember a time that you felt really good. Maybe you'd fallen in love, or you were relaxing with friends, or maybe you just achieved something. But return to that time like you're back there again. Now, see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel how good you felt. There you go. Now, in about 30 seconds there, you've changed your state. You've gone from to calm. So this next technique, there's a series of techniques that are in the family of psychosensory. There's the TFT tapping technique, which I think is pretty good. There's the one which Prince Harry does, EMDR, which I'm not so much a fan of. It does work, but for me it doesn't stick. So I like this, and I particularly like this. If you touch, basically here, if you touch here, 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 and here.
It's havening.
Havening, as in a safe haven. But we're just going to touch here, Brian, yeah? We're just going to do this, right? Now when you do this, it feels comforting. Yeah, because when you were a baby, your mother held you in her arms and rocked you. But also, you're hardwired to produce delta. Now, delta waves are the holy grail in the treatment of PTSD, stress, trauma, because they're synonymous with deep relaxation. So when you get traumatized by something, a 100 hertz wave travels and it phosphorylates the AMPA receptors. It creates a biological change in the brain. When you summon that, so if you think about something really stressful, something makes you anxious, we get the amygdala interested, and then we do this, we stroke the side of our arms. And this simple technique we're going to do now, I'm not going to do the full version of it now, I'm just going to do an abridged version. But I want you to get as stressed and anxious as you can while you stroke the side of your arms. That's it. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you right now? How stressed can you get?
I'm trying to get more stressed, but it's hard right now because I'm doing this. But I guess I'm like maybe 6.
6 will do. Yeah, 6 will do. Okay, there you go. Think of that. Collect that, all that stress and anxiety up in your mind. Collect it up. That's a good. Yeah. And then clear your mind. Clear your mind. We're going to do a simple visualization. Imagine we're walking on a beach. As I count down from 1 to 20, just take a footstep in the sand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I'd like you to remember a time you were really enjoying yourself. Anytime, Brian, maybe with friends or family, or just tell me a bit about this time. Maybe a time when you were laughing or just having fun.
Oh, I'm going to tell you about it.
Yeah, tell me
I
about
was
it.
with my 2 boys, they're 5 and 6,
Yeah.
and we're just like all laughing at something that's completely silly.
Oh, yeah. This is great. And what can you see? What can you hear? What can you feel?
I see my son Caden giggling and my other son just doing something really goofy and inappropriate, and we're all just like thinking it's funny as hell.
Great. And that feels good, right?
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. Okay, now, just relax and open your eyes and put your palms in front of you like this, facing up. Now, in one of your hands, I want you to collect all of the stress, anxiety, fear you can possibly get in touch with. Any other emotion that's uncomfortable, put a lot of it in there. In one of your hands, right? There you go, you got it there. That's it, collect it all up. Now, in your other hand, I'd like you to put peace, calm, comfort, peace, calm, comfort. And then move your attention above your head, up here. So think from up here and look down at those 2 different emotional states from up there and experience both of them at the same time. The fear and the peace, the worry and the calm, the anxiety and the comfort. Fear, peace, anxiety, calm, worry, comfort. Right now, you should probably be feeling quite calm. Yeah. Okay. So what we're doing, you see, is I'll explain how this works. This creates a massive amount of delta. We summon the upset. The delta floods the brain, changes the biological structure of the landscape. And then this technique is really an adaptation of a technique from my friend Genpa Roshi, where I've funked it up with an NLP version. So you get a representation of one emotion that's sort of several emotions that are uncomfortable. You get the opposite of that, the peace, the calm. And then by moving your attention here and experience them both at the same time, you reset the emotion or the signal in the ecosystem of your emotional intelligence. So when you go, yeah, I feel calm. So if we'd done it with something really quite extreme, you'd go, I know that was a pretty frightening thing, but it just doesn't bother me. So these are kind of quick samples of the sorts of things that are in this book, or that I do with people one-to-one, where I take someone who's extremely distressed or extremely upset, or they can't function, and we reset their emotions so once again they can. Because we need things like fear, we need anger, we need guilt, we need these things. If I'm stepping off a curb and a bus is coming, I want fear to pull me back, keep me alive. Someone violates one of my standards, I want to get mad, so I say, hey, if I do something that I feel is wrong, the guilt gets me to go and prepare that. So these emotions are all part of our experience of living and our intelligence. We just don't want to live in them, right?
Yeah. This experience at the end, when I'm doing them at the same time, is this so I can basically be with that anxiety, but also kind of water it down with some calmness, or change it from being completely overwhelming? Because it was weird. I was trying to be anxious, but then I'm calm. And be anxious, calm. But are you trying to maybe just dissipate some of that feeling?
Right. That's it, yeah. You're dissipating it, but you're simultaneously not just trying to negate it, right? We're not saying, go away. See, when you say things like go away anger, a lot in our culture, people are told, hey, don't get angry. That's not bad. It's not socially acceptable. So people disown their anger, and then suddenly, one thing happens and they explode because they've been, repressing it. Like one of those things at the seaside and you're trying. So, this happened a lot during the pandemic. People get anxious or they get mad and they're in a confined space with somebody they love and they go, why'd you put the bread in this straw? They get mad about some little thing, but it had nothing to do with that. It was just all the other things that led up to it. Right. So with this, what you're doing is you're not just dissipating it, you're actually resetting it. So you're right. When you've got 2 competing emotional states going on, which are polar opposites, one influences the other. So you better have a lot of peace, calm, and comfort going on. So I'm calibrating. When I'm looking at you, I'm going, yeah, peace, peace. And you're copying the mirror neurons in my brain. I'm going into a deep state of peace when I do it. And your brain picks up on that and goes, and also the tone of my voice and everything says, peace. I don't go, peace. I go, peace, calm. You see this if you look at any any experienced meditator, when they're explaining it to you, any kind of guru, they're not just explaining it technically, they're doing it usually, and that's how you learn it.
Right. And my hand was getting really heavy with all this anxiety. It was like, you probably saw it, right? It was like this big bowl, and this one was kind of going up. And then I'll tell you something that happened that's very subtle but strange, Paul. Maybe you can tell me what's going on. Is that as I counteracted this anxiety with the calmness, I was like, wow, it's not that bad anymore. And I'll be honest, the feeling I thought was, but it is bad. And I knew it was bad before, and now it's not bad. So does that mean I was wrong about it before?
No.
And part of me didn't want it to go away, because then it meant maybe I was wrong in the past by thinking it was so bad. And I'm having a hard time letting go of that anxiety. Is this what a lot of people struggle with, letting go of something that's a constant in their life that always gives them that dopamine hit?
Okay, so you've described it beautifully. So what's happened is you're recoding this. So this is something that went on in the past. Now the thing is, if a situation was bad or a person was bad to us, we need to remember, it's the old John Kennedy thing, forgive them but never forget their names, right? So the point is, we don't want to, even though it's happened a long time ago, we don't want to still be living in it. This is the problem with PTSD, post-traumatic stress. People are still in Iraq, still in some terrible battle theatre with things going on, even though they're back home, right? So what we want is all the learnings from that. So if somebody was mean to you, or if something, crisis happened, you think, I'm not going to let that happen again. You want to keep all of your ability to protect yourself. You just don't want to be living in it. So what was happening there was, you had a part of you going, well, stress, and then the part went peace, and you went, well, it's calming it, and then you went, hang on, we don't want to just get rid of it all. What I would say at this point is, and again, this is in the trance that comes with the book, is you keep all of your ability to protect yourself, you keep all of your ability to do all things that serve you well, but you just don't want to live in unnecessary stress, unnecessary fear, unnecessary worry, etc. So, I'm not saying to people, somebody said it to me this morning, actually. I was being interviewed on television, and they said, but what if, we just get rid of that edge? And I said, oh, no, you don't get rid of your edge. In fact, when you're super stressed and anxious, you're more likely to make bad decisions because you're reactive. You're not responsive. In fact, rather than just be like this white knuckles to life, you go into relaxed alertness. So you're in an optimum state to deal with everything. Yeah. And so I would say, when you think about that thing now, how does it feel? Not what it felt originally, not what it felt earlier. Yeah. And now actually I can see also that it can be calmed and tamed. Yes. And now I'm actually losing respect for it, So, which is good, because now it's like, well, why did that ever bother me? Yeah, that's right. So I think this is one of the things that, I used to be able to have an argument with somebody on a Friday afternoon, right? A 5-minute argument. I could make that last all weekend. I'd be, like, literally, and I suddenly realized that's my brain running me, not me running my brain, right? Now, is there something that I've missed? Why is my brain bringing this thing up? Sure, I feel hurt, I feel upset, I feel disrespected. Right, so this guy's now coded as, someone I need to be careful around. I know I want to be around this person, right? But he's living rent-free in my head, So these are ways to control, how we think. At school, we're taught what to think. Believe this, believe this, believe this. Yeah, sure, that's useful, if you're learning history or something. But I'm more interested in how to think, because very few people understand. They think just because there's an internal dialogue, they have to listen to it, or just because they're making movies inside their mind of all sorts of terrible things, they actually have to watch them. You can learn from them, but you don't want, you want to be running your own brain, not your brain running you.
Right, because you can create your own movies in your brain.
Exactly.
And design them exactly how you want them to your ends. But if people do feel a little bit of because people get used to these anxieties and used to these worries, and they're almost always there, and it's a constant in their life. And so should people beware that when doing these exercises, when they buy your book and go through it, that they might feel like this sense of longing when they're giving one of these things up, to let it just be like, no, that's normal, let it go. Is that something that can happen?
Yeah, if you suddenly took all someone's fear and worry away, they might in fact, I've done this, and this is what happens. They go, oh wow, I feel so relaxed. They go, hang on, I don't want to be this relaxed. I need my fear and stress, because it's a familiar friend. So the way I do it is incrementally, and we call it ecologically, right? So that means that you still have all of your ability to protect yourself, but without the unnecessary fear. And I'll give you an example. A phobia is a good example of a one-trial learning. You get bitten by one dog, mistreated by one dentist, stuck in one elevator, and the mind goes, right, this is a threat. So when any stimuli reminds you of the original incident, the smell of the dentist's office, or the thought of getting in an elevator, whatever it is, you produce a fight or flight response. So you don't have choice there. You don't go, is this a trustable dentist? Is this just an elevator? You just go, so you've less freedom. So what I do is I work on the assumption, this is one of the presuppositions of NLP, that all dysfunctional behaviors, no matter how dysfunctional, have at some level a positive intent. So a phobia, the intent is protection. It's just overdoing its job. Right? If I'm a self-saboteur, I find myself, getting into a relationship because, early on in life I'd been heartbroken and I thought, crikey, I find myself meeting someone who'd be going well and I'd sabotage it. I'd kill it early on, because the relationship, that is. Because I would think, I can't, because the part of me was going, we've been here before, we're vulnerable, we're going to get hurt, so it was just finishing it off. And I see this with, all self-sabotage is basically self-protection at some level.
Right. So it has a good aim, but it's getting you the wrong results.
That's right, yeah.
So look for the positive and then deconstruct it.
Well, you can. The thing is, thinking this stuff through isn't, this sort of like CBT approach. I'm not a fan of that, really. I'm much more of a programmer, right? So my approach is that you talk directly to the unconscious. And that's where the hypnosis comes in. So I put somebody into a trance, I talk directly to their unconscious mind, and I say, I know that this dysfunctional behavior has a positive intent. It wants to help you. And I'd like it to find 3 other ways to achieve the outcome, giving you the protection or giving you the whatever it is you need, right? Because we don't need to know. And when it can do that, tell me yes, lift a finger, yep. And now try those new ways as an experiment, boom, and imagine what it would be like. And suddenly, the person has moved outside of the limitations of their old survival strategy. And, these things get formed early on in life, first 7 years usually. Experiences of emotional intensity. Be quiet, no one wants to hear what you have to say. Right? This is why public speaking is the #1 phobia now. Because you stand up in front of the class, you read out loud, someone points out your mistakes and people laugh. There's your training course in fear of public speaking. I remember there was a guy I worked with years ago, and he'd said to his mother, he goes, oh, when I grow up, I want to be successful, And his mother said, oh, you don't want to be successful, son. Those successful people, they have heart attacks. And that had gone into his brain. And see, the unconscious mind is not logical. It's purposeful, and its purpose is survival, right? So when he started to get successful, his unconscious would go, and go, success equal heart attack, sabotage. And in those days, I was an old school hypnotherapist. This is a long time ago, back in the 80s. And I went, let's regress you and find out how this happened. There you go. That's where I pulled that belief. Now you don't have to have that anymore. Nowadays, we don't need to do that. We just go and say, find new ways to which there'll be no objection to you fulfilling all the positive intent of your saboteur, of the part that holds you back, or of the part that causes you distress or dysfunction.
All right, so you no longer have to identify the specific thing.
No.
Now you can kind of use this blanket,
that's right,
cure-all panacea for all of those pieces.
Yes, that's it. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of hypnosis, because all the things that you achieve in hypnosis, you can achieve in inverted commas, the waking state. But hypnosis allows us to do it very fast and very efficiently with the conscious mind out of the way and just go straight to the unconscious.
Yeah. Something that makes you very unique is your background in hypnosis. Can you speak on it a few minutes? Because you said back in the 80s you were doing this. I know you first started doing shows. Again, you're one of the OGs here in the UK, bringing that art that people didn't understand back then. And that's throughout all of your work. It's a crucial part, maybe not obvious to a lot of people because NLP came in afterwards. But can you speak on that a little bit? Because that's what makes you very unique.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, sure. So I was a radio broadcaster, and I loved being a radio broadcaster. And I had a particularly bad day. I'd broken up with my girlfriend, ran with my boss. The people in the apartment where I was living were keeping me up at night. And I went off to interview the local hypnotist. I was working in local radio. And I arrived, and this guy went, he goes, rather than, you interview me, I need to do it to you, mate. And I said, I was benevolently skeptical. I sat back, go on then, knock yourself out. And I felt so relaxed. I mean, really relaxed.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free,
visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.